4 months ago, I lay in a hospital bed with a shattered hip, a machine clicking beside me, and none of my 3 grown children ever showed their face in that doorway. Not one. I phoned all 3 myself. Then I waited. I am 81 years old. I have canned tomatoes until my knuckles split, sat up all night with croupy babies, buried my husband, and typed courtroom testimony for 31 years without dropping a word. I handed my children nearly everything I had to give. My back, my savings, my Saturdays, my own opinion, more times than I can count. And still, that hospital room was empty. That waiting had a texture to it, a specific, heavy stillness I will not forget. And in it, something finally clicked into place that should have clicked years earlier. My name is Dolores. I am going to walk you through the 5 things I allowed my own children to do to me, the 5 habits that nearly wore me down to nothing, because I refused to watch it happen to somebody else while they sit there certain it could never be them. None of this arrives all at once. It slides in sideways, dressed up as duty and closeness and love. And then one ordinary Tuesday you catch your reflection in a hallway mirror and do not recognize the small, tired woman looking back. I have been her, so let me back up first, because the ending will not mean much without the shape of everything before it. I was 4th of 6 kids, raised in a house that smelled permanently of coal smoke and biscuits, and I spent my whole childhood watching my own mother hollow herself out for everyone but herself. I promised myself it would be different for me. I put myself through a year of business college on switchboard wages, married a steady, quiet man named Garrison, and we raised 3 children, our daughter Renata first, our son Cole after her, and our youngest, Priscilla, who nobody has called anything but Percy since she was 2. We were not well off, but we were steady people. Ours was a small clapboard house, a porch glider with a squeak I still think about, and a percolator Garrison treated like a 4th member of the household. That was enough for a long stretch of years. Then Garrison's heart started failing at 61, and I nursed him through 6 hard years while keeping the books 3 days a week for a hardware store downtown. He died when I was 68. I honestly believed the hardest years of my life were finished. I assumed my children would gather around the way I had spent decades gathering around them. Instead, the phone rang differently after that. Fewer how are you calls, more calls that started with could you. And because I had spent a lifetime being the one who handled things, I kept saying yes without fail. And right there is the exact spot where all the wearing down got its start. The first habit I let take root, and it is the one that stung longest, even leaving no mark anyone could point to, was allowing everything I had lived through to get filed away as outdated noise. Renata is 56 now, sells pharmaceuticals for a living, quick-minded, and not unkind on purpose, though it lands that way sometimes. She had come for a visit 2 winters back, and we were shelling peas at my kitchen table when the subject turned to a newlywed pair I had once mentored through the church's engaged couples group, a pair barely into their 20s, squabbling over budgets, in-laws, and whose job it was to run the dishwasher. I told her the same thing my own grandmother told me. A marriage does not get built on the dramatic days. It gets built on the boring Tuesdays, the ones where you choose each other for no reason at all. Renata never looked up from her phone screen. Honestly, Mom, nobody thinks about it that way anymore, she said. Not cruelly, almost absent-mindedly, the way you would flick lint off a sleeve. But something in my chest folded shut, quick and quiet, like a door pulled to. I sat there nodding and smiling while underneath I was going under, because that had not been idle chatter. That had been 30 years of watching people come apart and stitch themselves back together, and in under 10 seconds she had boxed the whole thing up as irrelevant. I thought of my friend Fern down the road, 79, a retired schoolteacher whose son visits twice yearly and finishes her sentences before she can get to the end of them, not because he already knows what she means, but because he is not willing to wait through it. She told me she had quit talking much at holiday dinners. She just passes the rolls now and smiles and lets the table talk over her, the way you would watch weather through a window. Hearing that cracked something open because I recognized the exact shape of it. I had already started doing it myself, going quiet so nobody would be put out by my presence. The day I decided that was over, I waited for a moment alone with Renata and kept my voice steady. Checking your phone in the middle of what I am saying, or telling me I am stuck in the past, makes it seem like I have stopped mattering here. What I actually need is your full attention, not because every word out of my mouth is correct, but because I raised you, and 81 years buys a person the right to be heard out. She went still. She set the phone face down. I did not realize it felt that way to you, she said. It was a small opening, but it was the first one. The second habit, and this one very nearly wiped out my finances altogether, was allowing my son to draw on my retirement account like it was a line of credit that never closed. Cole is 52, works construction, generous to a fault, hopeless with $1. It started 8 months after Garrison died, when Cole called saying his truck transmission had gone and he would lose the job without it. $3,800. Just this once, he swore. I sent it. 2 months on, it was a gap between unemployment running out and his new position starting. I covered that too. After that came a down payment on a used charter boat he was certain would turn into steady side income. Then his daughter's orthodontist bill. Every single time I told myself, absolutely the last one. Every single time I was pulling from an account Garrison and I had built dollar by dollar across 31 years. Nights, I would lie in the dark doing sums in my head. What is left? How far does it stretch? What happens if this hip finally gives out and I cannot manage the stairs? That worry was not some vague background hum. It pressed down on me the way a wet wool coat presses on your shoulders on a long walk. Fern, that same Fern, had handed her own son $45,000 over 4 years, money set aside to carry her comfortably into her 80s. This past spring, she gave up her apartment and moved into a shared room at a subsidized facility 2 towns over because there was not enough left to keep a door open with her name on the lease. She wept telling me about it. Loving him was never the part she took back. She just wished somebody had warned her sooner that love was never meant to strip an account down to the last coin. The phone call I finally made to Cole was the hardest of my entire life. My love for you does not come with strings attached, I told him, but I have got to stop functioning as your emergency fund. Whatever is left in that account has to carry me the rest of the way, and I do not get a second chance at rebuilding it. I offered to sit down and build him an actual budget, help him track down real assistance, but the wiring of money had to stop, full stop. He did not speak for a long moment. Then he said, I did not realize how much I had been taking, Mama. That pause before he admitted it told me some part of him had known all along. The third habit I allowed was letting my youngest talk me out of my own rest, purely through the weight of a sigh. Percy is 49, and she has a way of making me question every decision I have ever made as her mother, without so much as a raised eyebrow. It is entirely in the exhale, that long, burdened breath that arrives before she has even said a proper hello. One particular Saturday, I had real plans of my own. My quilting circle was holding its spring showcase, and a half dozen of us were meeting afterward for pie, small, ordinary, and mine, and something I had looked forward to all week. Percy called that morning, already sighing. Overwhelmed, she said. She had not slept a wink. The boys were tearing the house apart. Could I please just come hold things together for the weekend, only this once? I said yes before I had finished thinking it through. I skipped the showcase. I drove the 40 minutes over. I spent the entire weekend cooking, scrubbing counters, and wrangling grandsons while Percy slept past 10 both mornings. Driving home Sunday night, I sat in my own driveway with the engine off and cried for a solid quarter hour, not because I do not adore those boys. I do, without reservation, but because I had given up one of my few unclaimed weekends for guilt that was not rooted in anything real. Wanting a Saturday to myself did not make me a poor mother. Wanting a life outside my grandchildren's needs did not make me a poor grandmother. I had given Percy 49 years of showing up. She could not spare me one single afternoon of quilts and pie. Next time she rang me with that loaded exhale already going, I told her plainly, Percy, hearing you sigh before you have even asked anything tells me I have already disappointed you before I have had a chance to answer. You matter to me completely, but I do not have it in me to show up for every single ask, and having a limit does not turn me into a failure. It just makes me a person with edges. She cried on the line. I told her guilt is not the same thing as love, that real love leaves both people room to breathe. Something between the two of us grew more honest that afternoon than it had managed to be in a long, long while. The fourth habit I allowed was letting my children use my house like a rest stop, a storage unit, and an on-call nursery rolled into one. After Garrison passed, I moved into a modest 2-bedroom condo in a quiet building for older residents, the first place in my whole life that belonged to me and nobody else. I arranged it exactly to my taste. I kept a row of terracotta pots along the balcony, rail basil, chives, and one stubborn tomato plant that never once produced a ripe tomato, though I refused to give up on it. After so many years of noise, the quiet in that place finally belonged to no one but me. Slowly, my children stopped bothering to knock. Renata would arrive Friday evenings with an overnight bag and a laptop and take over my kitchen table as a home office for the whole weekend. Cole would leave his boys for a couple hours that stretched into full days, sometimes past dinner. Percy stored a broken porch swing frame in my spare bedroom for 4 months because her own garage had run out of room. My one quiet corner of the world started to resemble a bus depot with nicer lighting. I would get home from a doctor's appointment to find people helping themselves from my refrigerator, watching my television, using my good towels. I took to standing out on the balcony beside the tomato plant just to claim 5 minutes of air that was mine alone. One night, after everyone had cleared out, I stood in my own living room and felt a grief with no clear name attached to it. I was fading out of my own address. I sent all 3 of them the same text. I love seeing you, but going forward I need 2 days' notice before anyone visits. This is the one place I get to be at peace, and I need some warning before that peace gets interrupted. Renata called within the hour, told me I was overreacting. Then, we will speak once you have given me the notice, I answered, and I let the phone ring the rest of that night without touching it. That evening was when they finally understood I was serious. This condo is not a fallback for anyone else's convenience. It is the one place that is entirely mine, and I mean to live in it undisturbed. The fifth habit, the most painful of them, the one that landed me in that hospital bed without a single visitor, was letting my children assume I would always be available to them while never once making themselves available to me. 4 months ago, I slipped on wet leaves on my own front steps and shattered my hip. 4 days in that hospital. I phoned each of my children personally. Renata had a sales conference she could not move. Cole said the drive was too long but promised to call. Percy said she would try and simply never showed. 4 days of listening to a monitor beep, running through every fever I had ever brought down, every middle of the night terror I had talked someone through, every scraped knee I had bandaged without being asked a second time. I had shown up for 31 years running, no reminders required, and the one time I needed someone in that doorway, not a single one of them could find the hours. That is not a minor oversight. That is a fact that tells you precisely where you stand with someone. Once I was finally home, still unsteady on the walker, I phoned each of them and said plainly, I need you to know I was completely alone in that hospital. I am not telling you this to shame anyone. I am telling you because there are days I need looking after too, and any relationship worth keeping has to run both directions, not just one. I kept my voice even. There were no tears on that call. Somewhere in that hospital room, I had already decided I was finished waiting around for anyone to hand me what I had spent a lifetime handing out. Instead, I built something closer to home. Women my own age, Fern, and a sharp-witted firecracker named Odalus, whose buttermilk pie ought to require a permit. We check on one another every single morning. We sit on each other's porches, and every one of us gets to finish her own sentences. Nobody rolls their eyes when it is your turn to talk. We are living proof that the people who actually show up do not have to share your last name. This is the part I actually need you to carry out of here. I did not tell you all this just to relive it. I told you all this since the thought of you flat on your back in a hospital room with an empty doorway is not one I can sit with. I do not want your savings bleeding out through 100 small emergencies that each felt like just this once. I do not want you canceling the one good Saturday you had planned because somebody exhaled loudly enough on the phone. I do not want you shrinking down inside your own four walls or going silent at your own table because you have decided your voice does not belong there anymore. You have lived a whole life by now. You have worked, sacrificed, and held other people together through things that would have leveled anyone with less grit than you. Your rest is earned. Your money is yours. Your voice still counts, and so does your own front door. Turning down the things that are quietly hollowing you out is not a failure of parenting. If anything, it is the clearest-headed decision you will make all decade. If any part of this sounded like your own kitchen table, tell me down in the comments, how old are you, and which of these 5 landed closest to home? I read through every one of them. You will not be the only person nodding along, I promise you that. And if there is someone in your life doing this same slow disappearing act, do them a kindness and send this their way. Subscribe if you would like more of these. I have got plenty of years left and plenty more still to tell. There is still time on the clock for both of us. Whatever years remain belong to you outright, not on loan to anybody. Do not hand that over, not even to the people you love the very most.